And, one observation as we are all watching this, because this is the largest and most diverse conclave in history, things are going to take a little longer, right, Monsignor?
They are. We have 133 cardinals, and that's just going to add a lot of extra time. So we're going to be called to be extra patient. We have to remember as well, when Pope Francis was elected, on the last vote, one cardinal attached 2 papers to the one ballot. So they had to cancel that vote, and they had to go through it all again.
Sure, if they make a mistake, then it starts all over again. And if you see here, when they go up with their ballot, they're walking and processing up just as they're doing now to put their hand on the gospel. So the amount of time that it's taking them to do this oath is something similar to the amount of time it's going to take them to put those ballots in.
And Monsignor, for people who have seen that new Hollywood movie, Conclave, Oscar-nominated movie, did they get that scene somewhat right in the way the ballot is rectangular? They write the name, they fold it over, they walk up, they put it in the chalice, and then, of course, the name is read, and then, of course, there is that red thread. That all is accurate, correct?
Absolutely. I watched Conclave a couple of nights ago, and I must say that a large part of it is quite true. This is exactly what's going to happen, and they're going to kneel down before the fresco of Michelangelo and say those famous words that I swear, in my own mind, this is the man whom I consider to be the next pope. It's an ominous task.
And Americans will be familiar from the last election of an American politician for president, the conversation around election security. Well, they take it very seriously here at the Vatican, not only with the oath of secrecy, of course, but with the 2 sets of scrutineers.
Yes.
Selected in advance. There's 3 gentlemen who review the votes, and then 3 more who double-check that review of the votes.
The revisers,
yes. The revisers. There's the scrutineers, the revisers, and then every cardinal also is allowed to keep a running tally at his desk as these names are being called out. So there is not going to be any doubt whatsoever as to what the vote total was at the end of this process.
They literally read it out 3 times. So first person reads it out, second person reads it out, third person reads it out and puts it onto the needle and the thread and writes it down.
One thing to understand is that all of that takes time. We imagine in the conclave that there's all this charged political debate going on. No, inside the Sistine Chapel itself, virtually the entire time that the cardinals are inside is given over to the ritual of the balloting. Each ballot takes about an hour and a half, and with this extraordinary number of electors, it'll probably even take a little longer.
So they sit the whole time? They don't stand up and
most of them will tell you that while that's going on, they're sitting reading their breviary. That's a book of prayers that clergy have, or praying a rosary, or doing. The one thing we know they're not doing is checking Instagram, because their devices have all been confiscated.
I believe the kids call it raw dogging it if you're going to go through a long period of time with no electronic device.
Yeah. Oh, right. Well, they're of a certain age, so they might be used to
I just wanted to, the cardinal we just saw come up with the black covering over his head is the cardinal from Melbourne, just 45 years old.
Wow. The youngest.
Incredible. Yeah. The youngest. Imagine if he were elected Pope.
We have been talking about this centuries-long tradition of the conclave to choose the Pope, and our Seth Doan recently visited the site of the first conclave. And Seth, what was that like?
Nora, it was interesting. I drove up to the town of Viterbo, about an hour and 15 minutes from Rome earlier in the week, to see where that first conclave was back in the 1200s. That's where we get that word conclave, conclave, from the Latin there, with the key, because they had to lock the cardinals into the palace of the popes there to make a decision. That conclave, you were just talking about how long, a bit longer with these 133 cardinal electors. Well, these cardinals took 1,006 days, nearly 3 years to pick a pope. And the townspeople, who at the time were charged with supporting these cardinals, got angrier and angrier, and finally said, we've got to lock these guys in. These guys have to make a decision. They locked them in. Then they began rationing food, giving them less to eat. At one point, the story goes, and documents show, that they actually removed the roof of the palazzo to let the elements in, to let the rain, to let the sun in, because they said, you guys have to make a decision. Of course, there were battles between noble families, among noble families here in Rome. It was a dangerous time in Rome, and they were in Viterbo because the Pope had died in Viterbo. So at one point, the conclave, what would become the conclave, the process to choose the next pope, was there where the Pope had died. But as we look at a longer conclave, we will not be looking at 1,006 days. That is certain. And our friend John Allen here has done some math. I'm stealing it from him, John. Sorry, apologies. But looking back at the last 10 conclaves, John did the math. And correct me if I'm wrong, John, but you're saying about 6.8 votes is what it has taken on average, looking back over the last 10 conclaves. So that could mean that we could have a pope by the end of the week. Not 1,006 days.
Although if
I can confirm Seth's math is absolutely correct.
Although, can you confirm Seth's anecdote? I love that story. It's one of my favorite ones about the very long conclave, the rationing, the locking them in, and then the removing the roof. That'll certainly focus the mind, won't it?
Well, look, conclaves have been held in various places throughout the history of the Catholic Church. You've had one in France, you've had one in Germany. Depending on the sort of historical situation of the papacy, it hasn't always been here in Rome.
Yeah, although they've had the real estate for it here, and the Sistine Chapel purpose-built for conclaves back in the 1470s. First one was in 1492, as the Monsignor mentioned. And then they have this long gap where all that other history rushes in and intervenes. Now they're back. I don't know why they ever left. It's so beautiful there.
But we do still have vestigial elements of that early that conclave of Viterbo. And aside from the fact that it's taking place behind locked doors, there is also the pasta of the conclave, very famous. It's the pasta that is served to cardinals during the conclave, and it is intentionally simple. It's a pasta made just with butter and Parmesan cheese, and that's it. And the idea is, if you want your classic Roman dishes, if you want some bucatini amatriciana, you got to give us a pope first. Okay. And then we'll let you have at it.
Isn't it funny how, because most of the food we feed our kids is actually that very simple pasta, which is butter and cheese.
There's also the interesting situation here of not only the scrutineers reading and the revisers checking, but they have the infermiere that have to go to the Casa Santa Marta if somebody is ill. So if somebody has had a bad pasta and they can't come the next day, then they will have to vote from their bedroom, and they have specially elected people to go and get those ballots.